Hi guys, welcome back to the Hugh video, and in this video I'm going to be building a custom purple iPhone 5 64GB to create a one-of-a-kind iPhone 5. I have previously built a purple iPhone 6 from parts, but with the iPhone 5 being my favorite phone and purple being my favorite color, this was an iPhone I just had to build. To build this iPhone, I will be repurposing this slate iPhone 5, which I purchased on eBay with 3 other iPhone 5s around a year ago. The iPhone currently has a few scratches on the back, but does have a good screen. I will also be using this scratched up old donor housing, which contains a lot of the small parts that I'll be needing to build the purple iPhone 5. So later all I'll need to do is transfer the logic board from the phone that we're going to be using into the completed purple housing. So to start off with, I'm going to be working on the power button and volume flex cable. Now to get rid of the cable itself or pull it out, it's quite simple, but putting it into the new phone is a little bit difficult, but because this is a new housing, it's actually a lot more simpler than if you just need to go ahead and replace it. With the new housing itself, it contains a bag which actually has the pin needed to hold in the power button. Now I found out an easier way of attaching the power button, and that is to place it into the housing and then put in the power button pin. This way you don't have to try and wrap the power button around the pin, as the pin is already inserted after you've lined everything up, which makes the power button installation 10 times easier, and it's honestly the quickest installation of a power button I've done so far. The buttons included with the housing itself aren't actually purple, they're slate or black, so that's a bit of a shame, but either way I will be installing those into the phone. You have to take out just about everything from the old housing or the old phone to insert into the new housing, including these little metal grills that go under all of the speakers and microphones in the phone. They're not very difficult to remove, but you've got to make sure you do that, otherwise you'll put your phone back together and notice some gaps and grills missing. Now I actually reused the power button and volume buttons from the old frame. Now that was because I didn't have to transfer over the little metal spacer that glues on the back of those. It's very hard to replace and transfer across, but considering that I don't have purple buttons anyway, they're going to be slate regardless if I was to use the new ones or the used ones. So I did opt for the used route, as it's not going to make any difference in the long run, but if I did have purple buttons, then I would go that extra step to make sure to install them. Now we also need to transfer across from the old frame is some of these grills and surrounds on the bottom of the phone. To get the headphone jack one out, you just want to get a spudger and just push it through like that. Comes out very easily with a bit of pressure. Now the dock connector one is actually a little bit more difficult to remove. I like to get a metal pry tool in there and just sort of scrape along it and just apply a bit of force. Eventually it will come loose and you can just lift that up and out of the phone. The last couple of pieces you're going to take out are the grills for the microphone and for the speaker. They're actually the little metal bits that you see from the outside of the phone, so you need to make sure to transfer those across. If you're having a bit of difficulty getting those out, you can just use the sim eject tool to put some pressure from the outside of the phone to push them out. Now that I've got them out, I can put them into the purple housing and securing them back into place. Unlike the red iPhone 5 I made, the surrounds at the bottom of the phone fit perfectly and don't protrude out the bottom. With that done, I sourced out a dock connector which already had the speaker assembly attached to it, so I could install that into the frame, making sure to reattach the little wire that goes from the headphone jack to the center of the dock connector, making sure that's secured properly in place. Then I could move over to the donor frame and just transfer over the very small parts, which are actually the clips to the screen. If you don't transfer these across, the screen won't clip into place. So quite an important feature in the housing itself. So I'll need to transfer those across to the purple housing. Now if you're following along at home and building your own custom phone or just rebuilding a housing, you want to make sure you put these in first, because as you can see I actually have to take out the dock connector to get access to one of the screws on the side of the housing itself. So I did have to slightly lift up the speaker which is attached to the dock connector so I could get in and get enough clearance to screw in one of the screws to hold those brackets in place. With that done, I could just reattach the dock connector, the small portion I had to pull up, and then I can move along to the SIM card lever, which helps with the SIM card being ejected, so you want to make sure to reattach that correctly, and then I can reinstall the vibrate motor back into the phone. With all of the small parts installed into the purple housing, it's time to pull apart the slate iPhone 5, which is actually going to be the donut logic board, screen and battery for this purple phone. Undoing the pentalobe screws at the bottom of the iPhone, we can use some LCD pliers to help us get up the LCD. Now there's no need to replace the battery in this device, as I previously did it probably about 2 to 3 months ago, and in total it probably has 5 or 6 charge cycles on the battery itself, so there's no need to replace that with a new one, as I've just done that. I'm going to start by disconnecting that battery before I disconnect the screen, as I don't want to fry anything internally in the phone. Removing the battery, I can begin working on disassembling the logic board out of the iPhone. I brought this iPhone along with 2 other iPhone 5s, one 16GB and 2 64GB iPhone 5s. I have all 3 still, one I gave to my dad, but this one here was advertised as not activating past the setup screen. Although inserting a SIM card, I was able to activate it just fine and later downgraded it back to iOS 8.4.1 and jailbroke it. Now that the logic board has been unscrewed, I can unclip the Wi-Fi antenna, and it's time to transfer that logic board into the purple housing. Making sure all the cables are routed above the logic board and making sure they don't get caught underneath it, I can begin screwing it down and reconnecting everything to the phone. This is also a great time to test out the phone itself, make sure everything is still functioning, as well as the buttons like the power button, as they are quite difficult to get functioning properly. What I have noticed with replacing the power button is it will never work as good as it did from the factory. I don't know what it is about the power button itself, but something about these iPhone 5s, 5Ss, and so on is that the power button is just designed in a funny way that it never works as good as it did. I mean, it works, it's functional, but it just doesn't feel exactly right compared to a original one. Now that I have the logic board screwed in, it's time to power it on and test out the phone. At this point, you want to make sure all the buttons are functioning and everything is fully functional before you assemble the phone, as you don't have to open it up if something isn't working correctly. Next, it was time to install the new battery adhesive strip, which will hold in the new battery. With that now installed, we can get a final look inside of this device before I whack in that battery and screen onto the phone. After rerouting some final cables and installing one half of the battery bracket, it's time to reinstall that battery and install all the plates and brackets back onto the phone, making sure everything's connected, clean inside, and all ready to go. I always give the inside of a phone a wipe over before I close it up, just to remove any fingerprints or dust from inside the phone. Then I can go ahead and close it all up and reinstall the 2 screws into the bottom of the phone. And we're done. So this is it, a one-of-a-kind purple iPhone 5. Packed with 64GB of storage and jailbroken on iOS 8, this is my 3rd purple iPhone. I've also built a 128GB purple iPhone 6 and a 64GB purple iPhone 4S. The back of this phone looks exceptionally great and is actually slightly darker than my purple iPhone 6. Paired with the black antenna lines on the back, this is a really nice combination, and I much prefer it over the white antenna lines on my iPhone 6. I now own an iPhone 5 in colors black, purple, red, and silver. In terms of custom phones, I have a gold-plated iPhone 4, a purple 4S, a red iPhone 5, a purple iPhone 5, a purple iPhone 6, and a transparent Galaxy S8. These phones are one of a kind, custom built or custom modified by myself. The iPhone 5 has a very iconic design which was used all the way up until the iPhone SE, and I believe that if this had been released in purple, it would have definitely been a color choice for many. Let me know down in the comments what you guys think of the purple iPhone 5 and whether you'd pick up a purple iPhone if Apple was to sell one today. It was a shame that no purple buttons and SIM tray came with the device, meaning that the color doesn't match the housing itself. Hopefully I'll find some online and I can replace the ones in here currently, but for the meantime it still looks very nice and I prefer it over the colors that the iPhone 5 was released in. And on that note, this has been a Hugh Jeffries video. If you like what you saw, hit that subscribe button and consider checking out the custom and modded tech playlist for more videos just like this. Also, make sure you're following me on my social media, link will be in the description. That's all for this video, and I'll catch you guys next time.